According to independent research conducted by Vance and Bjorn, 70% of AEC firms feel the deluge of project information is holding them back from effective collaboration. Worse still, only 4% of construction managers say their organizations are collaborating highly effectively and see no major need for improvement. So, what can be done to turn this tide? Welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast. I'm your host, Todd Wyant. And this is the show where we empower you to transform industries by championing innovation. You're invited to join my mission to embrace and share the innovations transforming the AEC, MEP, and manufacturing industries. If you like our show and you want to know more, check out our new website, bridgingthegappod.com. And please share with your friends and coworkers while leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Today, I'm excited to welcome back Matt Dillon, Core Services Director at Applied Software. Welcome back to the show, Matt.
Thank you, Todd. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Can you start by describing a day in the life of an architect, 20, 30 years ago, and how is that different from today?
Yeah, there's been a lot of changes, obviously. 20, 30 years ago, a lot of us were still drawing on paper for that matter. But, from a bigger picture, projects were being delivered differently. I mean, a typical project 30 years ago was done with the old design bid build process where an architect would do the design work and maybe pull in a few consultants at some point, like a mechanical engineer, structural engineer. But everything was being done via fax, maybe email. Email was a fairly new thing 30 years ago. So collaboration was pretty low tech, and then we didn't involve contractors and so forth until the project had gone out to bid. And then a contractor was selected, and at that point, then we would start working with them, but always, as the owner's representative. So it was a very kind of a linear process. There were always things that turned up in the end stages of the project, what we consider the end stages of the project, where the contractor was able to finally contribute and identify things that we hadn't caught in our design process or that we hadn't thought of, which caused a lot of rework and change orders, things like that. So made it a lot more expensive, and it took a lot longer to get projects done. And it was a lot more frustrating, and it was a very adversarial relationship. Everybody was really more interested about avoiding being sued for a mistake that they had made than actually developing a good product.
Interesting. So you just kind of tapped on this a bit, but the old way of design, it worked pretty well for a long time. It got the job done.
Hundreds of years, yeah.
Yeah.
So they built cathedrals, right?
That's right. They built some pretty impressive stuff there. So why do people need more connected workflows today?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things. Projects are being delivered differently now. I mean, we still have design, bid, build, but we're moving more and more toward other project models where, like, construction manager at risk and integrated project delivery, and all of these new means of working on projects means that people that typically weren't brought into the process till further downstream are now being involved earlier and earlier in the process. And there's more back and forth going on, even in schematic design. Now we're getting input from contractors and in some cases even fabricators and so forth. You've got prefabricated construction now. All of that has an impact on the need to collaborate and how we collaborate and how we deliver projects. Projects are much more fast-paced because of that. So there's that to consider. And the other thing is simply cost. We cannot continue to build projects the way we have in the past because it just costs too much. It's too wasteful, and it's not sustainable.
Uh-huh. So how has having better collaboration tools changed the day-to-day in the AEC industry?
30 years ago, we would share things by fax or email or even snail mail or go to somebody's office for a visit or something. But now with cloud-based collaboration tools, first off, if you're using the right collaboration tool, you've got what I like to refer to as a single source of truth. You'll probably hear me say that a few more times today. That's one of my favorite phrases these days. Everybody knows that they're working with the correct version of the document, whatever that document might be, whether it's a building model or it's a specification or whatever. By using cloud collaboration, everybody is using the same version of the same document. things can happen a lot quicker. You don't have to wait for somebody to get around to emailing you something or sharing it on an FTP site. Everything is hosted in a cloud project, and it happens pretty much live as you're working on it. So it impacts the pace of the project, and because everybody's working on the same version of the document, there's less confusion, meaning less change orders, and ultimately less money involved.
Interesting. So let's maybe take a step back. How would you define successful collaboration, and then what are some of the benefits of good collaboration?
Successful collaboration is really about communication. And again, the cloud-based collaboration tools facilitate that a lot more. We can get more into that in a minute if you like. The benefits are less frustration, a less adversarial relationship. I think when people start collaborating, what I've noticed is when people start truly collaborating, those old attitudes of, let me avoid getting sued first and then see what I can do to make this a meaningful project start to go away, and people tend to become a bit more trusting and more collaborative, and it actually fosters more of a team approach. And there's a really good book on this subject. It really doesn't get into technology a whole lot. It talks more about collaborative approaches and attitudes. And it was written by the Associate Vice President of Planning and Design at Rice University, Barbara White Bryson. And the title of the book is called The Owner's Dilemma. And whether you're an owner or an architect or an engineer or a fabricator or a subcontractor, I would recommend picking up a copy of that book. You can get it on Kindle for not a whole lot of money. And just see what she has to say about the whole collaborative, cooperative approach versus the adversarial nature that we're all so used to.
Interesting. So it's really trying to get your guard down, let your guard down, and be open.
Realize that at the end, we all want to develop a good project, right? Otherwise, why are we doing this? So
Sure.
if we start from that premise, and we understand that yes, there is risk involved on any project, but instead of exercising risk avoidance, which is what we've all done in the past, risk aversion, if you will, we instead turn that around and make it risk management. Yes, we know things are going to happen. How do we deal with them in good faith?
Yeah. Interesting. So what would be some of the common hesitancies of people when they're trying to collaborate more? What would be a barrier and stop them?
I think something that people get concerned about, they want to protect their data, which is understandable. I mean, even in a collaborative environment, there's intellectual property and so forth that you want to protect. So that's something that people are concerned about. I think the other thing is simply confusion, not really knowing what's out there as far as collaboration and how to use the tools, because they are tools that you need to learn how to use just like anything else.
Sure. So what would be some of the pitfalls that when people are trying to collaborate that they need to be more mindful of? And then can you dish some of the collaboration gone wrong stories that...
First off is understanding what is collaboration and what collaboration isn't. And this kind of goes to collaboration gone wrong. Collaboration is not storing files in Dropbox or an FTP site or something, or even going so far as to try to host a Revit central model in a Dropbox folder. I've had customers try to do that. Hey, we need to collaborate with this other firm. We need to do a joint venture or something. We want to all work in the same Revit model, but we don't want to let them behind our firewall, understandably. So let's put that central model up in a Dropbox folder, and they find out real fast that it just doesn't work. It's not like you're putting it in a regular file folder, and Revit doesn't communicate with it properly. So it's understanding the tools, right? Understanding, again, what's available and how to use it, and understanding what true collaboration is. Dropbox is not collaboration. Dropbox is file storage and file sharing, but that's different.
Interesting. So studies have shown that about 68% of firms that have implemented a collaboration technology solution do not have strong, well-developed strategies and goals and objectives before they bring that solution in-house. And then 68% of those firms only experience partial success because of it.
Right.
How would you go about building a strategy for looking at the technology options that are available?
Frankly, I think I'd approach it like we do just about any other workflow implementation type of engagement, where we look at the firm, look at what their current pain points are, what their current bottlenecks are, and then look at what they're trying to accomplish. I mean, you got to have a goal in mind, right? So even if they don't know that they have a goal in mind, we can help them determine what their goals are. And then once we know what the goals are, we can structure a collaboration workflow that'll work for them. The tools are pretty straightforward, really. It's just a matter of, okay, which pieces and parts of these tools do you want to use, and how do you want to use them?
Yeah. So I read that on average, AEC firms spend about $4,000 per year per employee on technology acquisitions. But there's literally hundreds of different collaboration technologies in the market, and more coming up online seemingly every minute. How does a firm make sense of the options out there, let alone create success with any of them?
Once again, I think it comes back to understanding the tools available, right? And we can help with that, because there's collaboration is different depending on where you are in the design build process, or further on into owner occupancy. So if you're a contractor, for example, you're going to use or need a different set of collaboration tools and technology than, say, an architect would, or a fabricator would, or for sure an owner would, right? So what we can do is help you determine where you fit in that spectrum, and then which of the tool sets are applicable to what you do, and how they translate to the other tool sets that other people, maybe downstream or upstream, might be using, because it's a continuous process through the entire cycle.
Yeah. So one of those tools is Autodesk BIM 360. It consists of a variety of different cloud-based tools for virtually any phase of the project, from the conceptual design through construction to handover to building operations and maintenance even. But because it's so all-inclusive, there's a lot of confusion around BIM 360 and how does it apply to each principle and each discipline for that matter, and where does it fit in the BIM process? Can you shed some light on this?
Yeah, you're right. The BIM 360 kind of world, if you will, is at first glance fairly complex. As a matter of fact, I had a meeting with a customer this morning, which that was the whole purpose of the meeting, was to help them make sense of, okay, what is BIM 360? What all does it include? And then what out of all of the things that it includes, what parts of it would they be interested in using, and how would they use it? And if you want to get into detail, we start off with just basic document management, right? That's at the foundation level of BIM 360, is just simple document management. And by that, I mean being able to view a Revit model or an AutoCAD drawing or a Navisworks model and mark it up, and then maybe even create issues that you can assign to different people to resolve, and then track the progress of those issues. And that's where we come back to communication and collaboration, real time, same version of the document. Everybody can understand what's happening. Everything is documented in the cloud, so that you can actually see who did what, when, to what. That's document management. And then if you're someone who's actually working in a live Revit model and you need to host that in the cloud, then you add the BIM 360 design functionality to that, and it plugs right in. So you have the document management functionality for markups and issues, but then you have BIM 360 design that lets you allow multiple people to work on the same cloud model and actually author that information in the cloud. If you go a little bit further in the process, maybe you are a contractor and you're needing to do clash detection, or maybe you are on the design side but you would like to do clash detection. Then we can add the BIM 360 coordinate tools, model coordination, BIM 360 glue, even Navisworks to do that. And then further on down the stream is the contractor himself or herself that is trying to manage the project in the field, which is BIM 360 build, right? So it just kind of depends on what your role is. And again, the owner, we get into BIM 360 ops or building ops, right? So it just kind of depends on where you are in the spectrum as to which of those tools that are all pretty much built on BIM 360 document management, which of those would resonate with you. And Autodesk has been pretty smart about packaging the bundles to fit those various parts of the design and build process. You can mix and match, but usually there's one bundle that will resonate specifically to a particular persona or role.
Nice. So a little something for everybody, and maybe even help with scalability.
Yeah, and they talk to each other. So as an architect, if I'm using BIM 360 design, well, that same information can be used on downstream by the contractor using BIM 360 build.
So what, in your opinion, are some of the kind of primary services and benefits of the overall platform BIM 360?
Here I go again, single source of truth. To me, that's the biggie, right? It's like there's not 26 different versions of the same file floating around in different emails. You know, this consultant has a version that's a week old, and this consultant has a version that's 2 days old, and they're not really working on the same information. With BIM 360, everybody's working on the same thing. That's really, to me, one of the primary benefits. Of course, you also have security. Now, that's a concern of a lot of people. We mentioned that earlier. BIM 360 allows you to have total control over who sees what when, or if at all, right? And what they can do with it. Can they see it? Can they edit it? Can they share it with other people? There's a whole series of layers of permissions that you can use. And you can make it as simple or as complex as you want, but the tools are there to protect your data at the same time, allowing you to share it with who you need to share it with.
Nice. It sounds like it just really helps streamline and create efficiency across the board.
It does. You know, nice. To be honest, you know, I see people all the time. They first get into BIM 360. They're very, very kind of they use little pieces and parts of it, right? But the more they use it, the more they start to use. And after a while, when you talk to them, they go, "I would not use anything else for collaboration." This is, you know, once they get past that initial hump of understanding what it does and how it works.
Yeah, you gotta get ramped up on that learning curve.
Yeah. On the BIM 360 design side, we can usually train people to be productive in that from a project administration standpoint through actual end user experience in about 4 hours.
Oh, wow. That is pretty quick.
Yeah,
That's not bad.
Pretty short learning curve. It's not hard to learn. It's just really a lot of it is just understanding the interface and then kind of the workflow. It's not so much picks and clicks, you know, which tool does what. Those are easy to figure out.
Interesting. So you just mentioned BIM 360 design. How does that help with collaboration?
So BIM 360 design is specifically geared for people who are using Revit. And you can use it two ways. You know, the way that gets the most publication is I can have multiple people from different parts of the planet, different organizations. We're all coming at it from you know, different firewalls. I can literally host a model in the cloud securely. And anybody that I invite to that model can actually work in that model. It's as if I was hosting a Revit work shared model, for those of you that are familiar with work sharing, on a local file server, but I'm not. It's in the cloud. But it's secure. Performance is, you know, pretty much comparable to what you experience on your local network. The people I was showing it to this morning were kind of shocked when I told them I was working out of my house on a kind of an AT&T mid-range consumer grade Wi-Fi network when they saw how fast things were moving up and down. So there's that aspect, being able to collaborate live, multiple people in the same project over the internet in a work shared environment, just as if they were in their local file system or local network. But then the other part of BIM 360 design is what I call the design collaboration workflow, which is even if I'm not actually working in someone else's live model, they can make that model available to me at certain critical points in the process. They can say, okay, we're at a point, we need to publish this version. And I won't get into all the technical mumbo jumbo, but essentially it allows them to control when they make a particular version of the document available to others. And then as a consumer, I can choose, maybe as an MEP engineer, for example, I can say, well, you know, the architect just shared this version of their architectural model, but I'm not quite ready to consume that yet. And that happens sometimes. I'm really not ready to address those changes. I'm going to hold off on that. And I can choose when to consume the data. So there's control on both sides of it.
Nice. It sounds like the flexibility there is pretty incredible.
Quite a bit, yes.
Nice. So how do you go about helping designers and builders see the value of collaboration and then the purpose for information exchange?
You know, it's not really difficult for them to see the benefit. A lot of times they already know that there's a need for collaboration. They just don't know how to do it. They don't know what's available. So usually if I can just show somebody what BIM 360 design does, for example, if we're talking to, again, someone on a design side, it doesn't take very long for them to see the benefits. This morning when I was dealing with my customer, you know, I showed them a few things in BIM 360 docs, and one thing in particular that they were having issues with were, you know, tracking what we used to call in the industry red lines, right? So back 30 years ago, if I was working on a project, I might be reviewing a set of construction documents that were about to be issued, and I would see things that would need to change. Well, I would generate a set of blue lines, blueprints is what a lot of people call them, mark them up with literally a red felt tip pen, and I'd pass them down the line to somebody to address. Yep. Well, that's a very manual process, but it's got a purpose. Well, in BIM 360 Docs, you can electronically mark things up, but then you can specifically assign those markups to somebody to address, and you can track the progress, and there's a communication that goes on back and forth until you reach closure on it. And it's all tracked. It's all easy to see what's going on. So when I showed them that, it was like the light bulb went off in their head. So it's usually one or two things that they're struggling with in the in whatever they're using for collaboration now, that if you can identify what that is that's causing them pain and show them that what BIM 360 does to alleviate that, that's usually all it takes.
Nice. So how do you make project goals and aspirations important and really meaningful to all the members and stakeholders of the team?
I would hope that they would already be meaningful, but once everybody realizes that, look, we're all in this together, we're supposed to be a team, I think that just naturally starts to happen. Again, what I see when people really start truly collaborating is that they tend to have more of a stake, if you will, in the outcome of the project than just,
getting that buy-in.
Yeah, exactly.
So similar lines, how do you set up the expectations across the team on how to use BIM? BIM, I feel like means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Yeah, it is different things to different people. Again, it depends on what your role is. I taught a class on this at AU last year. I don't want to say I taught a class. I presented on this topic at AU Autodesk University last year. And really, what I try to stress to people is that, back in 30 years ago, again, we moved from paper to CAD, right? And that was a pretty big change, but it wasn't a disruptive change. And that's the key term here, is disruption. We learned to do what we used to do on the drafting table with a T-square and a triangle and a compass and all those other little tools, to doing it on the computer. And so you just had to learn how to use AutoCAD or any of the other CAD programs that were out at the time to do basically the same thing. It was still drafting. It was still basically the same process. But now we're going from CAD to BIM, and that's a disruptive change. And what people need to realize, and what I always stress when I'm talking to people about BIM, is this is not just buying some software and getting some training and thinking you're going to be able to do BIM. It's a whole process change, and it impacts your entire organization, not just the people that are involved in the actual project work, but it could impact every aspect of the way your office works. And so you need to be prepared for that, and then we can help with those workflows and implementation strategies and help you move forward. The other thing about BIM is you don't want to bite off more than you can chew. I call it trying to boil the ocean, right? Pick 5 benefits. What do you want to get out of this? Why are you being forced to do it, or are you doing it because you think there's some benefit? Well, what are the benefits you think are out there? Let's focus on 5 of them. And if you're being forced to do it, and by forced I mean you've got a mandate from an owner that you've got to do a BIM deliverable, and it's like, well, if you don't do this, we're going to lose the work. There's that aspect. Fine. I can give you 5 benefits. Let's throw 20 benefits up here that I know of for BIM. And let's focus on 5 that you can take advantage of, since you've got to do this anyway. And let's do that. Break it up into smaller pieces that are easily attainable, and will give you the most bang for the buck right off the bat. And then once you've attained those, then we start looking further down the line. The other thing I preach with this is what I call a culture of continuous improvement. You've never fully reached BIM maturity, because as soon as you have developed what you think is a mature BIM process, the technology has changed, and there's more benefits that you can get from it, and more benefits that your customers are wanting from it, or will be wanting from it at some point. So you need to be looking for ways of constantly improving your process. I always recommend that after a few projects, you come back and do a post-mortem. Okay, what went well? What didn't go so well? How can we improve on that? And then where can we take further advantage of the technology to grow our implementation?
Gotcha.
Keep you from falling behind.
There you go. Get some wins under your belt and keep on building on those successes or failures, and you learn something what not to do.
Right? Have a like a 3 years, as my colleague Robbie Sidawi always says, have a 3-year plan. Where do you want to be in 1 year? Where do you want to be in 2 years? Where do you want to be in 3 years? And work toward that, but be ready to change course if you need to.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. What are some ways that you could use BIM models to help find solutions to project issues going on?
So the obvious is clashes, right? So, oh, look, we have a duct going through a beam. That's a lot easier to deal with in a computer model than in a half-built building, and a lot less expensive, right?
Sure.
So clash detection, that's an obvious, but also procurement. When you start getting onto the contractor side and the subcontractor side, you can use the building model for doing estimates. You can simulate the construction process, so for staging. You can literally animate the entire construction process and find out where you've got maybe a staging issue where you've got two subcontractors trying to work in the same spot at the same time. Maybe I need to change my schedule up a little bit. It's really easy to see that with a visual animation, which is it's relatively easy and straightforward to produce with a BIM, a building information model. The building information model is more and more becoming a deliverable for the owner, because the owner wants data in that model to be able to track equipment, not only where the equipment is and what the equipment is, but what is its maintenance schedule, when was it last maintained, and then also space management and asset management. The building's there, the rooms are documented, they can take that right into a facilities management program. And more FM programs are now being developed to talk and communicate directly with the Revit model.
Nice.
Those are just a few. Right. So how many times, if as an architect, I can't tell you how many times we would show a customer something on paper, right? Oh, look, here's a nice two-dimensional drawing of your building, and they think they understand what we're doing until they see it built, and then it's like, no, that's not what I thought it was going to be. But if I show somebody a rendering or even an animation, a walkthrough, then that communicates a whole lot better than a bunch of static drawings. Yeah.
So only one or two small, use cases for it, huh?
Just a few small, tiny use cases, yeah.
Nice. Well, I got one more question for you, and it's about cultivating a collaborative team culture. But if you want to hear Matt's answer to that, you're going to need to subscribe to the podcast. All right, Matt, how would you recommend a firm go about cultivating a collaborative project team culture?
I think it has to come from the top.
Well, thanks so much, Matt, for joining us on the show and unpacking how collaboration and the power of BIM 360 platform can really help move the AEC industry forward.
Okay, thanks. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, Todd.
Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome anytime.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Thank you to those tuning into the show. If you're interested in learning more about collaboration or BIM 360 platform, reach out to our sponsor, Applied Software, for a discovery call. Or you can visit ASTI.com and let them know we sent you. You can listen to this show anytime by simply going to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, be sure to check out our website, bridgingthegappod.com. Until next time, I'm Todd Wyant, thanking you for joining us on the Bridging the Gap podcast, sponsored by Applied Software. Keep innovating.